What, like? So, this might be the first of two videos, I'm not entirely sure yet. There is something that I do want to talk about. Whether or not I get round to it or not, it's a different matter entirely, because struggling to scroll through 2 hours of Humza Yusuf sitting in Parliament talking about his hate crime bill or attempting to justify it is a rather tedious affair. That said, this came to my attention, not the picture on the screen, but the women included, granted, in relation to an article that she wrote the other day. And this woman on the screen with her fucking pussy hat, because she's of course an SNP feminist, this is modern day Scottish nationalism, of course, folks. Christina McKelvie. Now, who is Christina McKelvie? Well, when she's not wearing her pussy hat, she's supposed to be a Scottish nationalist, part of the Scottish National Party. She's a politician who's a member of the Rainbow Unicorn Parliament for Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse constituency, first elected to the position in 2011. Since the 27th of June 2018, she's been serving as a minister for the elderly and equalities. Everybody's favourite fucking word, equality, in this day and age. You know, her Twitter is the proverbial BS that every Rainbow Unicorn feminist pumps out, of course. It's no different at all. And of course, while we're on the subject, I find this rather riveting. Fantastic news. So that woman that died, that everybody tried to say was because of systemic racism, despite the fact that she had rich parents, well, her child and father have been granted asylum now. What have they been granted asylum from? Fucking nothing. However, I digress. So I've made a few videos in the past where she's been included, such as this.
On, I did a walk for Black History Month. One of the first things I did was I did the slavery walk in Glasgow, which was quite interesting for me because I look at a lot of the places in Glasgow and have done for many years as, you know, built on the back of slaves and, you know, tobacco, sugar, and that I've always viewed that, and I don't know whether that's just growing up in that city, but that was one of the things
Nothing to do with the Industrial Revolution. No, that was built on the back of slaves.
I looked at
Christina McKelvie knows.
You know, the definition of racism around about slavery and the work that needs to be done and how we atone and do reparation for that is
atone and reparation.
Bit different from what the young people who were sitting here a few weeks ago are experiencing now, you know. So having that diversity of view, that diversity of understanding and that diversity of lived experience will allow us to ensure that we respond appropriately to some very, very, you know, small intersections that make a huge difference to people's lives. So although we have the legal terminology, we also have all of that work that we need to do, because in order to do that and to use the energy of all of that, we need to make sure that, you know, meaningful change happens.
Yeah. Another video that I had her included within was from, if I believe, last year, where I'm not going to play it because it's out of sync. If you wish to watch the video, my vocals aren't out of sync, but the video was something to do with the system that I used to record these videos. Nonetheless, she took to the stand at some feminist circle jerk, encouraging more women to get into politics. It wasn't just about getting women into politics, though, of course, it was about getting feminists into politics. And she had her say, as pissed off as I was at the time, still pissed off thinking about it now, but there's that video. And, of course, the anti-white tirade that took place in the Rainbow Unicorn Parliament not that long ago, where everybody talks about Humza useless and Nasar War's passionate speeches. Ah, well, it wasn't just them, you know. They take all the headlines because they're brown. But every single politician that took part in what they had the audacity to consider a debate, circle jerk, realistically, they all took their turn to spew out their venom, their anti-white bullshit, their white guilt, for all to see. And Chupcake McKelvie, she was no different, you know.
I undertook a tour of Glasgow last year, not for the first time, but to learn more about the cities linked to the historic slave trade. I was struck by just how much that terrible stain upon our history is still woven throughout the fabric of that great city. Whilst today we are resolutely focused on improving the lives of black and minority ethnic people, we cannot forget that we once enabled the terrible practice of slavery. It's clear to me that roots of the entrenched structural racism that continues to pervade global society are firmly based in the historic enslavement of black people, mainly from African countries.
Nothing to do with any other group of people that was ever enslaved. We won't talk about that, no.
Racism has allowed white people to determine...
White people, see? It wasn't just Humza Yusuf with the white, the venom in his voice. No, Christina Chupcake McKelvie, all of them in fact, you know. White. This is your Nationalist Party, Scotland.
Black people as a subhuman class, treated as chattel, as property. By reducing black people to this status, it salved the collective conscience of white people over the world to justify their barbaric acts, and we should all take responsibility for them. Presiding Officer, I now want to turn to the broader agenda. The Scottish Government has taken steps to advance race equality and tackle racism, but to be frank and absolutely honest, we have not gone far enough, and we need to make much greater progress. In 2017, we published a Race Equality Action Plan outlining actions we will take over the course of this Parliament to secure better outcomes for minority ethnic communities in Scotland. An update published last year indicated that while progress had been made in some areas, there remains so much more to do, and a senior-level programme board has been established to drive the progress we all want to see. Allocated £2.6 million to fund organisations working to advance race equality. We have taken action to address bullying and discrimination in our schools, still a work in progress, and we have a working group to take forward measures to address underrepresentation of minority ethnic teachers in Scotland's schools. We are actively working to improve the employment rates of minority ethnic groups in Scotland, and our Workforce Equality Fund has funded initiatives to support minority ethnic people to progress within the workplace and employers to develop a more inclusive workforce. Presiding Officer, black and minority ethnic representation in this place is still severely lacking, and it remains a significant issue that we have never seen a woman of any ethnic minority background in this Scottish Parliament in its 20 years. So funding for the Equal Representation Coalition has supported them to develop a toolkit to help political parties to improve the diversity of their membership with a view to addressing the underrepresentation in not just this place but across other elected places in this country.
Scottish nationalism, boys. You know, I love that. So they talk about underrepresentation, hundreds of thousands of pounds being pumped into all these different organisations to help address the systemic racism and the fucking underrepresentation. But at the end of the day, if we're all one, then it shouldn't realistically matter. And the minute that you cross that line into prioritising certain groups over others, you're effectively breaking the law. But of course, it's positive discrimination or positive action. So that leads me to this, and as I said, I could not get this story out of my head, or story, opinion piece, whatever, from Chubcake McKelvie, the SNP's fucking go-to guy or girl for everything about equality and feminism and women and the blacks and the browns. So I had to do a bit of tomfoolery to get this article, because as you can see, I reached my limit apparently, despite the fact I'm on the computer and I haven't accessed this news organisation in about a fortnight. However, nonetheless, so I had to do a bit of tomfoolery, which incorporated refreshing the page and print screening, and it took a lot of time. I got the article in its full entirety, which I've got in Paint, which I'll come to in just a second. But even the fucking beginning, Christina McKelvie, I'm going to give you the scoop. And she talks about people come from all over to join tartan of modern Scotland. Modern Scotland. I mean, what is realistically different to the Scotland of today, to the Scotland of the last century? I mean, you could realistically, the people in the 19th or the 20th century could have called that modern Scotland. But we have to accept this namby-pamby terminology that this is the here and now and things are different. But they're not realistically different. The only difference is that we have wankers like Christina McKelvie and the people that pull her strings, the people that pull the Scottish government, the British government's fucking strings, are shoving people into our country at astronomical fucking rates. And we have to just accept it because it's modern and progressive. It's not fucking progressive. It's regressive. So she says here, and I mean, I love this photo, eh? So let's just open it up, shall we, eh? I mean, look at this bullshit. I'm using one hand, so give us a second, eh? I mean, this was, if I'm not mistaken, Edinburgh. Injustice and corruption will never be transformed by keeping them hidden, Black Power Fist. Black Lives fucking matter. Who is policing the police? There comes a time when silence is betrayal. So, the top paragraph of Christina Chudcakes McKelvie's little spiel here says the following. As far back as the Celts and the Picts, people were coming to what is now Scotland. It's just right off the bat, it's bullshit. It's just bullshit. It's just a formulation of Scotland as it became and what it is now known and present. It's been Scottish people, an ethnicity in and of itself, a combination of the two. People have been coming here for so long. If that was the case, as I've pointed out in so many of my videos before, then the 2001 census was 98% white. 2011 was 96% white. But before that, yeah, we've had European immigration since being part of the EU, but we're talking centuries back at this point. The only immigration, if you wish to call it that would have entered Scotland during the duration of the existence of Scotland as a country would have been people from other parts of the UK. And I hate to break it to you, they were also white. They were ethnically British to these isles, if you will. Welsh, Irish, English. Not people from the fucking Caribbean. But anyway, this is the level, this is the utter nonsensical revisionist BS that the likes of Christina McKelvie are going to tell you all about. While she's intermittently eating her fucking cupcakes. They have continued to come, bringing diversity and new cultures. Scotland had a culture. We had a culture. Granted, it died a death after the Culloden battlefield and whatnot, but you know, well, that was the last part of the Scottish of old, but irrespective, Scotland has existed, the Scottish people have still existed, but we have to completely destroy and eviscerate our own history and our own culture. And why? They've continued to come. Who is they? Bringing diversity. What does that mean? Because if we're talking about a bunch of Polish people, a bunch of fucking Romanians and Germans, that's not really, it's diversity in the sense that we're different ethnicities, if you will. But in terms, grand scheme of things, that's not what you're talking about. Are you trying to say that there's been an umpteen Cheddarmans have walked into Scotland? No, you know. And new cultures that have become an integral part of the beautiful tartan that is modern Scotland. The rich history also includes people from countries like Africa and Asia. Our rich history includes people from countries like Africa and Asia. That's not true though, is it? Unless we're talking about very recent history. However, their stories aren't always told as part of our collective Scottish history. I mean, oh wow. Oh, you're gonna fill my boots, are you? Christina McKelvie. So, it says here that Black History Month champions the achievements and sacrifices of black women and men and all people of African descent from around the world. If you cared that much, Christina McKelvie, why didn't you write this article last month? Oh, is that because it's supposed to be BLM month or Black History Month. When did that become a thing, by the way? I don't recall that in school. Anyway, of all people of African descent from around the world to promote vital discussion around issues such as racism or lack thereof, lack of equality, what we really mean in this regard is equity, and racial so-called injustice. The only injustices that I seem to keep seeing day after day is blacks being pandered to and whites being shafted. So anyway, as I said, that's as much as I can see in this, so we have to go to this. Look at my beautiful little pin. So, it says here that recently, the so-called virus pandemic and Black Lives Matter, or the Black Lives Matter movement, have shed a light on the inequalities that persist today. You know, after all this time has passed, and we all know at this point that George Fentanyl Floyd died off the aforementioned fentanyl, but we're still, or she is anyway, still jumping on that fucking bandwagon. She says that it's shed a light on the inequalities that persist today, making it all more important to actively celebrate Black History Month rather than just acknowledging diversity. It's not to acknowledge this so-called diversity that Scotland sees everywhere. In Rainbow Unicorn Land, we are determined to play our part in eradicating racism. And how are you going to do that? Oh, I wonder. Brainwashing people. That's why they're targeting our fucking children. Inequality and injustice. And building a better, fairer world. Although we know there is much more that we can and must do. To do this, we have to properly look at our history and place it in an appropriate context. So we have to look at our history from a skewed history that these assholes are going to present to you. And even if we did look at our history and we look at all the wrongs that we did, how is that going to eradicate so-called modern day racism? To this end, in June, the Rainbow Unicorn Parliament made a commitment to support the development of a museum of slavery and empire, because without Christina McKelvie and the SNP telling you how fucking evil your ancestors were, we ain't gonna eradicate racism. Just because you suffer from white guilt, I hate to break it to you, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. My ancestors, I'm not responsible for what they did. I'm not. I don't hold a grudge against the English for what they did to the Chieftains, the Highlanders. I don't hold a grudge against the English in general. But yet we have to feel bad for what we did to the blacks and the browns. I don't give a fuck. And if I don't hold a grudge against the English, why the fuck should we be expected to grovel and pander? If these people have a grudge against us, that's their problem. I don't care. I don't care either way. Help ensure that this work is done in a way that reflects the communities that have been affected by these terrible histories. We've established a panel of independent quote-unquote experts in museums, culture and race equality. So let me come to this one. They will make recommendations about how Rainbow Unicorn Land's museums can represent a more accurate portrayal of Scotland's colonial and slavery history. This committee will be chaired by Professor Sir Geoff Palmer, the same dickhead who came from Jamaica and became Scotland's first fucking professor. Scotland was so racist he wouldn't have that position. He would never have got the job he got, but it didn't stop him sitting in the BBC documentary called Black and Scottish, oxymoron, you can't be black and Scottish. Didn't stop him running his mouth every chance he gets, to talk about the racism of Scotland, despite the fact he's a rather wealthy man, but he's a sir, he's a professor, so we need to listen to what Geoff Palmer has to say. He's Scotland's first black professor. Today, just one of the major contributions to Scotland. This word, contribution. The same way that they have completely diminished their identity, they never say the Scottish people anymore. It's the people of Scotland, or citizens. Another key trope to pick up on is they say contributions all the time. So Abdul floats over in his boat, but he's going to make a contribution. Geoff Palmer came to Scotland, he's going to make a contribution. I don't give a fuck about your contributions. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't care. I don't care if you make millions. I don't care if you make nothing. I don't want you here. I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm at a point now where I have had enough. As important as it is to understand the painful history of those who came to Scotland through the slave trade and empire. I mean, how many people came to Scotland via the slave trade? You didn't. You fucking didn't. Oh, it's just such bullshit. You fucking didn't. We didn't even have any plantations or anything like that here. There was like one guy in Glasgow who owned a tobacco plant in America who happened to live in Glasgow, and that's what you've got to go on to claim that Glasgow's built on the back of slaves, despite the fact the Industrial Revolution paid for the most of the, or gave birth to the majority of the wealth that Scotland has in the modern era. That and oil. Nothing to do with fucking slaves. Oh, fuck me. But as important as it is to understand the painful history of those who came to Scotland through the slave trade and empire, we have to recognise the positive, undeniable contribution, there's that word again, that they and their descendants have made to our country. I mean, anybody could make this so-called contribution. For every Geoff Palmer, the professor, how many Tom McDougall professors are there? It's ridiculous. If he wasn't here, somebody would have filled that role. Education is a crucial part of our plan. Our curriculum provides opportunities for young people to learn about all aspects of history, heritage, culture of Scotland, including the role that Scotland played in the slave trade, because that's what we need to know. We're not going to talk about the descendants of Africa. We're not going to tell these descendants of African descent, about how they ended up in the slave trade. No, we're not. We're not going to tell the little Muslim Pakistani descendants of the world about their ancestors' role in their own variation of the transatlantic slave trade. No, we're not. We're not going to tell the little Jewish boys and girls about their ancestors' role in the transatlantic slave trade. No, we're not. We're going to talk about how Scotland is the epitome of evil. We're going to talk about how we have to feel bad for the crimes, quote unquote, of our fucking ancestors, and we need to talk about what we need to do to rectify the wrongs of the rights that happened 200, 300, 400 fucking years ago. That's what we're going to do here, and we're going to achieve equality via this methodology. Education is a crucial part of our plan. Our curriculum, quote, quote, provides opportunities for young people to learn about all aspects of history, provided it fits into the narrative of white man bad. Heritage and culture of Scotland, including the role that Scotland played in the slave trade. But that is not enough. Under the leadership of the Education Secretary Leadership, loose title, the Education Secretary Baldy Sweeney, Education Scotland is looking at how to use existing teaching resources and developing further materials and professional learning to teach about black heritage, Linked to this, we are also about to begin a programme of engagement with education and race equality stakeholders. Who are these stakeholders, by the way? Who are they? Why do they have a say in anything that happens in our country? To identify how we can better support the teaching of Scotland's past. We can help to make sure they understand the importance of tolerance and anti-racism in Scotland's present. Or present. Anti-racism is anti-white, anti-Scottish. These are only a few of the things we're doing right now to build a better, fairer Scotland. Fairer. What do they mean by fair? They don't mean equality because meritocracy suggests equality. No. Racism is an evil that none of our societies can claim to be immune from. Everyone in our society has a responsibility to stand up against it, and together we can eradicate it. You can go fuck yourself. Sorry. Looking to our future, I recently met with the inspirational young ambassadors for Intercultural Youth Scotland, the same Intercultural Youth Scotland that produced their groundbreaking study that I've made a video on. They're pathetic. They had no proof, all anecdotal, and it wasn't even proving that racism existed in Scottish schools, despite the fact that's what their so-called study showcased. All it was how blacks and browns felt in school. All anecdotal. Oh, I reported something to the teacher who didn't take me seriously, racism. That's not proof. But of course, they're inspirational. They're ambassadors because they're brown and black, and they don't like white people. They produced a report on the impact of the pandemic specifically for minority ethnic people and minority ethnic young people, and ideas for how we can make an impact to support all communities in this time. For me to hear the voices of young people through all of this, because they are the people who will be leading Scotland into the future. We're not only having to listen to them, but we must also work with them. So this Black History Month, please take some time to listen to the voices of black people in your community and around the world. Learn something about the great leaders that we've seen in our history and amazingly talented individuals working in Scotland today. Please also get involved. We need more white allies as we work towards the equal and fair Scotland we all deserve. Beautiful stuff from Christina Chapcake McKelvie with her pussy hats. Just wanted to share that one. Anyway, peace.